Guys and girls, welcome back for another episode of Steaks with Mates. I have a special guest with me here today. I want to welcome you, Frank, to an episode of Steaks with Mates. How are you going?
Hi, Geoff. I'm great, thanks. It's another lovely sunny day here in the UK. We've had about 5 days of solid sun. It's still
Lucky.
around 5 degrees, but it's really nice in the sun. So it's very, very welcome because it's been a long, hard winter.
Oh, mate, I can imagine. You mentioned the 5 degrees there, and I got a sudden chill. That is something you don't get here in the subtropics. So, can I ask, before we get into your timeline of your story, what is a naturopathic practitioner?
So I studied at the College of Naturopathic Medicine, and it's a course rooted in natural remedies for various health conditions, and it was an excellent course. I'm glad I did it. I got into functional medicine around about 7 years ago, starting with Dr. Mark Hyman and just reading his literature.
Oh, yeah.
And I really wanted to do the functional medicine course, but it's expensive, and it's in the US, and so you can't get sort of finance for that. So I took the closest thing to it in the UK, which was this particular course.
That's awesome.
So I started 2 years ago and finished this time last year.
Wow. Amazing stuff. Well, look, I want to get to know you a little bit more. And I guess if you don't mind pinpointing a time in, I guess, your space where you decided to embark on a health journey. That might be, when you started carnivore or wherever you want to start. When did your health journey begin?
I would say my health journey started when I took to running. I was living in Thailand at the time, in my mid-20s. I moved to Thailand to kind of change my life and get out of the rut that I was stuck in. I hadn't really applied myself at school, and so I was kind of just wading through life and just doing. I was working in a call center at the time, in fact, for many years, and I wanted to change my life. So I went over to Thailand to teach, and I just jumped on a flight and just went for it. At the time, I was using drugs quite frequently and drinking heavily also, and I wanted to get away from that lifestyle. So I continued drinking heavily in Thailand when I first got there. It was quite stressful starting as a teacher, as I'm very much an introvert, and it was sort of having to speak in front of big classes, and I found it really, really stressful, and I was kind of using alcohol to cope. And I actually got to the stage where I put myself in hospital with gastroenteritis.
Oh, wow.
And I was there for a couple of days, and I left the hospital and thought, I really need to do something about this. So I took to running, and I just started to run around the park. It's 36 degrees there, sort of standard every day. And I just built up slowly week by week until I think it was within the first month, I ran my first half marathon, which was in Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So I continued running for the next 2 years, and I I was doing track sessions and the whole endurance runners routine, weekly routine with track sessions, long runs, mileage, all mixed in. And I took to obviously fueling myself correctly. At the time then, in the scientific literature, it was all about carbohydrate, carbohydrate loading essentially.
Yes.
So going back a bit, when I got to the age of 16, I took very avidly to cooking, and so I've cooked for myself from the age of 16. I cooked every day. I very, very, very rarely eat takeaways. I just absolutely loved learning. I loved the creative side of cooking. I loved different recipes and different world cuisines. I read many, 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 many books. I've got many cookery books. So I put my cooking skills to my sports nutrition knowledge that was building through these running days, and just built on that really. So I met the running was really great for me because it got me sober. So I was completely sober for those 2 years I was running, and it was, looking back, it was definitely the best time of my life. And I've always been someone that once I take to something, I can't really do anything else. I can do one thing at a time and just dive straight into that, and that's all I really care about. And at that time, it was all about running, and I really, really enjoyed just getting better every week. So after that, I did actually move into a career into cookery because it is also a big passion of mine, and I didn't want to be, after watching chefs on TV shouting at each other and how hot it is in the hot kitchen, I knew I didn't want to be that side of the kitchen. So I decided to study pastry. And I actually went to Le Cordon Bleu, which is the famous French cookery school.
Yes.
They've got a campus in Bangkok.
Yes.
So I did that at the weekend, and I came back to the UK as a qualified pastry chef. And I
Nice.
walked, I worked through London for the last 10 years. In various high profile kitchens. It's a very, very high pressure, tough job, but there's an element of creativity and artistry to pastry that's different to the hot kitchen, and I found a great creative outlet, although it was stressful at times in this part of the kitchen. Yeah, going into kitchen life, I very, very quickly fell back into old habits, and in fact, coming back to the UK, seeing all my old friends, and I fell back into the kind of the trap of drugs and alcohol. I've always sort of looked for external sources of dopamine, and the high pressure of kitchens, I fell back into this trap very, very quickly. So I'd say the first 5 years of my chef life was very much 70-hour weeks at work, and then absolute sort of mayhem and partying all weekend, never any proper rest. And it really, 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 really took a toll on my mental health.
I can imagine.
So after those 5 years, I started to look for a way out of this lifestyle. and
Mm.
that's when I started to look to nutrition. As I love cooking and love everything about food,
Yeah.
I looked into. I mean, this was around the time where podcasts were starting to become
Yes.
a big part of everyone's life, I think.
Yes.
And actually, the beginning of my journey into podcasts was Rich Roll, the vegan ultra runner.
Yeah.
And so I obviously there's a vegan bias there to all of his content and his guests. And I did
Yes.
actually, I think one of the first big impact podcasts for me was Will Bolshewitz, the gut health expert, vegan gut health expert. So I
All
read his
right.
book, Fiber Fueled,
Mm.
and I actually had a little 6 month stint as a vegan.
Wow.
I found I in the beginning it was fine. I thought, okay, I can do this. And there's further down the 6 months I got, the worse I started to feel. Just this crazy amount of fiber, and also that you can just sort of prioritize fruit. And looking back now, from what I know, the excessive carbohydrate consumption, glucose spikes, and crazy amount of fiber is pretty disastrous for
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I can imagine too. I mean, like I've done a stint of vegan as well. Not as long as 6 months, but um, the gut microbiome adaptation, I guess, was the biggest thing for me. It's the same thing with carnivore. When you transition a little bit fast, you do get a few symptoms of gastro. Um, Intestinal discomfort or even severe symptoms. I experienced that on the vegan diet because I did it too fast and I did it wrong.
for me, well, I when it came to carnivore, I jumped straight in overnight. I kept a couple of kept a couple of condiments in. Like I kept my black pepper and
Yeah, yeah,
mustard for it
yeah,
through the first week. But
yeah,
the relief I found from it was just almost immediate, and it was just
yeah.
so profound, such a profound moment in my life. I mean, it really is one of the most memorable moments of my life.
Isn't it
It
not?
it took 24 hours, and then it was 48 hours to really notice the switch. But I just woke up that second morning and felt like a completely different person. It was just so profound. Um, but regarding the other way, when I've always been, I've always had, a very plant rich, plant
Yeah.
orientated life from my sort of diverse cooking background. And so
Yes.
transitioning into a vegan diet was not, I didn't really notice anything too out of the
Mm,
ordinary.
mm,
But as I say, what I did notice was that the further I went down the journey, the worse I started to feel.
mm, mm, mm. So after this stint of veganism, I guess when did things start to change, and when did the I guess the low carb space start to uh, come into your radar?
I continued just going through podcasts, and then that was when I found Dr. Mark Hyman. Um,
Yes.
and at the time, then I know his views have changed quite a lot now, but he'd always been on the
Yes.
fat over carbohydrate side,
Yes.
writing his early books on blood sugar control and things like this.
Yes.
And I was fascinated by, I think originally, the thing that really fascinated me was, I forget the guest who brought this to his attention, but the fact that you can get phytonutrients from grass-fed meat.
Mm.
And this really really grabbed my attention, and I dove into his content sort of very excessively, and I read a lot of his books, and then he crosses over many borders with. Then I found that was when I found Dave Asprey, and then
Yes.
I took to the other side, and I actually adopted the bulletproof fasting. So that's
Yes.
probably about 5 years ago now, and I remember that was definitely when I performed best at work and I felt best. I would bulletproof fast until about 2 and then go for lunch. And I'd be predominantly ketogenic at that time. I would have sort of salads with olive oil and mackerel or something like that as it would be my food throughout the day. But what I would say is there's a part of me. There's a reason why I chose pastry, because I do have a sweet tooth,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I would always have a little mini dessert. It would usually be quite small, but it's like Greek yogurt that I
Yeah.
would have berries and dark chocolate and nuts and seeds and things like this. But it got to the stage where I was having it. I'd have to have it after every single meal, even if that meal was very, very, very low carb, just salad and meat or salad and fish. And I know that I was over this sort of, as we know now, this therapeutic zone of ketosis.
Yep.
I would
Yeah.
be possibly in a ketogenic state throughout the morning because of the bulletproof fasting, and then
Yep.
it would all be pushed over. And I just remember always going to bed a bit anxious, and like the end of my day was nothing like the beginning of my day.
Interesting. Very interesting. And so, did you, I guess, experience the, well, they call it the keto flu, wasn't it? The phenomena where you sort of when you're transitioning into the ketogenic way of eating, you get hit with a barrage of symptoms. Did you experience that at all?
Um, I it's yeah I don't really remember. I know that if I overdid the MCTs, I would
Yes.
definitely feel a bit nauseous.
Yeah.
Some days I was just like whoosh it in, and then sort of
Yeah.
about midday I'd be like whoa. But no, I don't really remember a keto flu.
Okay.
Um,
Fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I went through a transition of keto before I went carnivore, and there wasn't really, there was so much noise in social media that told you, oh, you've got to watch out for the keto flu. You've got to watch out for, obviously the cholesterol thing, but the ketogenic diet has just got so many things to watch out for that it might be off-putting for a lot of people, but obviously not. But now, talk us through what led you to carnivore, because that's another jump as well.
It is indeed, yeah. So through my journey of sort of nutrition research from, I guess, the past 5 years, I think I'd listened to Paul Saladino as early as 4 years ago.
Yes.
Actually, at the time that he was still strict carnivore. It's
Yes.
probably the content, this things come up and then someone sends you something. It's like,
Yes.
look at this guy, he's eating raw kidneys and all sorts.
Yep. Remember the
So
days.
I'd known of it, and then every now and then I'd listen to a kind of a podcast and go, wow, this is something else. So it'd been on my radar for probably 4 years. But
Okay.
then when my ketogenic journey started, I didn't know about metabolic psychiatry, and it was I think. Well, I just heard Christopher Palmer on a podcast probably 3 years ago, and then Brain Energy came out, and I
Mm.
read Brain Energy, and then at this stage I was still using drugs and alcohol, much less, but
Mm.
still. And I read Brain Energy, and then I thought, okay, maybe it's time to double down a bit on being more ketogenic.
Yeah.
The way that he explained everything, and the way that it can, rewire brain chemistry, sort of really resonated with me. And so
Okay.
I became a bit more strict with my carbohydrate consumption, and then I and then well, that was, and then COVID happened, and this
Mm.
sort of threw everything off, really, as you know, for everyone. So being a very high, having a very highly active job to doing nothing, to going doing nothing, it was a
Yeah.
big transition. So I then, sadly, then my father passed away, and I moved back to my hometown, and then um, that was a big wake up for me. My father passing, and he'd always wanted me to be sober. He
Mm.
was pretty much alcoholic until he was 40, and
Mm.
he got sober at 40, and then became a running coach. Actually, did it for
Wow.
years, but as I say, it was a wake up call for me, and after about 3 or 4 months after his death, I managed to get completely sober. And
Wow.
that year of my life when I was sober was probably the hardest year of my life, because I thought, okay,
Mm.
this will be the answer for me now, and I can start to, you know, get to the bottom of my mental health struggles. But I felt worse in that year than I ever had done. And I was completely sober. I had more anxiety. I had,
Mm.
I just struggled my way through that year. And I was like, why is this? I was really doubling down on the biohacking things that I learned from Dave Asprey, cold therapy. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd jump in my
Mm.
bath full of ice every morning at 6.
Yeah.
I'd sauna 4 times a week. I'm lifting, I'm sprinting, and I'm going into what was pretty much a deep depression for the first time in my life. I'd
Mm.
always struggled, but I'd always used drugs and alcohol. It just
It's a coping
got
mechanism.
me out of any of my
Mm.
struggles every time, and that's why
Mm.
I resorted to that. So that's one mechanism. But then doubling down on everything, like, plant diversity and everything I'd learned about nutrition, and it's still not working. And in fact, me feeling worse, I was just, why is this? What's happening here? So you start to join the dots when you start to listen to a bit more carnivore content, and then go more down the anti-nutrient route. I'd actually read,
Yes.
I think I'd read 4 of Dr. Gundry's books as well over those 5 years.
Wow.
So I knew about
Okay.
them. And also, as a pastry chef and a food lover, I've been making sourdough bread for probably 15 years. Started at home, and
Yes.
so I'd known that the long fermentation. In fact, I'd only ever eat my bread. I'd hardly ever eat it from anywhere else, because I'd ferment it for 48 hours, and I know that that's reducing the phytic acid and the anti-nutrients there. And then
Mm.
reading
Mm.
Gundry's work and learning about lectins, and is in the skins and the seeds in tomatoes, and how much is cooking beans
Yeah.
reducing all of these anti-nutrients. And I just started to go further down this route, and the answers started coming, closer and closer to carnivore. It was like, maybe there is something to this, because you're going to be taking all of that anti-nutrition out. And the further you go down and you look at, goitrogens, and it's just endless. And
Yes.
there's not really one plant food that doesn't block bioavailable nutrition of animal
No.
foods. When you start to
No.
look into the literature, and even, coffee. Now, I think
Yeah.
you're still a coffee drinker. I love
Oh
coffee
yeah. Yeah.
myself, but I have stopped it. I've gone on and off. I still have a cup every now and then,
Yeah.
but even the tannins in tea and coffee, it's all a big problem, really.
100%. Yeah. 100%. And I will never promote coffee as something that you should do on a whatever diet you're in. It is a substance addiction for most people. And I'm happy to accept that. I'm quite addicted to coffee actually,
Mm.
because it provides me with the benefits doing shift work.
Mm.
So that's part of the reason why I drink it. But that's very interesting that you went down the route of the plant toxins first. And you know, the first time I actually heard about plant toxin was oxalates by Sally K. Norton. That was the first, actually, that got me deep diving into, looking at all the plant toxins. That was before Chapey put out this wonderful, wonderful 1 hour presentation on low carb down under. Plants are trying to kill you. And then, yeah, that switch just hit. But anyway, so you started getting into the plant toxins. When did you finally say, I'm going to do this? I'm going to take all these plant foods out.
So it's coming up to a year now. It's about 10,
Wow.
10 it's maybe nearly 11 months. So I haven't mentioned this actually before, but I'd been in a relationship for 4 years before, and I found it increasingly difficult. And as I mentioned before, that year of getting sober
Yes.
and still being, and in fact feeling like I'm going into a pretty deep depression. I actually went to the doctors and almost took antidepressants, but obviously having a background knowledge or base understanding of functional medicine, I really didn't want to go down that route, and I was trying everything not to. But it all got too much for me, and I actually left my relationship a year ago, almost around this month, I think. And then I had time to think for myself, and it took about a month of quite deep research into carnivore that was leading me more in that direction. And I just went, right, I'm going to do it. And I just did it.
Wow. Took the plunge right into it. And as you mentioned, it seemed like uh, the effects were almost immediate. Talk us
Yeah.
through what you experienced through, I guess, this discovering of a new way of eating, and just the the changes that you experienced yourself.
Yeah. As I say, it was so profound that I'm an eternal introvert, but I felt so strongly that morning when I woke up, or the second day of carnivore, that I actually filmed myself. I was getting in the sea and I filmed
Yes.
myself. I actually put it on Instagram in the end, which I would never have thought I would do in a million years when I actually made it. But I felt that strong that I just had to sort of document it, speak to the
Yeah.
camera and go, this is truly profound. That nutritional therapy of this, this stature can have such an unbelievably profound effect. And then you start, as I say, you start going more into the metabolic psychiatry research side of things with Georgia Eade and, as I said,
Mm.
Christopher Palmer before. And you can see, I mean, yeah, so I read Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind last
Yeah.
year, and is just one of the best books I think I've ever read. It's just, you know, she just on the hit it on the head with everything she talks about there.
Amazing. Can you, for the viewers who don't know, just, in simple terms, what is metabolic psychiatry?
So it's the use of the ketogenic diet as a nutritional strategy for mental health conditions.
Mm.
So depending on which level you know where you lie on the spectrum of mental health challenges, I think from Dr. Georgia Eade's work, the closer you get to a strict carnivore diet, zero
Mm.
carb, zero plant toxins, um, sort of relates to the stronger the mental health condition. So,
Mm.
for instance, like, you
Interesting.
know, schizophrenia um, would be the best nutritional strategy for something as extreme as that would be a strict carnivore diet.
Interesting. It's such an interesting concept as well to grasp because I mean I'm just relating back to my practice as a nurse and having looked after patients with a mental health diagnosis. You never once, and I knew about the ketogenic diet and its sort of associative sort of effects on certain mental health disorders just by what I've heard. But diet as an intervention, like that was to me that was unheard of. So I can imagine, you know, other people felt the same as well. That's really cool. So uh, you certainly sound like you experienced a change in your mental clarity. You experienced some mental clarity. What talk us through some other things that you experienced as well?
So having believing so much in plant diversity,
Mm.
I'd always I'd struggled with gut issues
Mm.
in a big way. I just always thought, surely this is doing me good. More plant foods. I mean, I even before. So now we've got what is it? Zoe, the gut health app,
Yes.
and they're promoting 30 plants per day or per week or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was already, because of reading so many different nutrition books
Mm.
and the benefits of this plant and this plant, I just believed that more was better. And
Yeah.
if I'm really, really honest, my gut was an absolute mess for
Mm.
as long as I can remember.
Mm.
But I just went with it and thought, it's all doing me good. It's all doing me good. So when you go strict carnivore, you realize that well, it makes you question. You know, microbiome science is
Yes.
the newest nutrition science,
Yeah.
and it's by no means complete. It's easily
Yeah.
10 years off of us knowing what's good and what's bad. Obviously, we know that the bad bugs are the sugar loving bugs,
Yeah.
and by not feeding them, your gut health is going to be, you know, is going to be better. Um, but so yeah, so until you actually go strict carnivore, you don't realize how much relief you can feel. It feels effortlessly digestible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, if you, for instance, it's not. I know I don't make a habit of it. I don't eat late before bed.
Yeah.
but you can actually eat a massive carnivore meal and go straight to bed and wake up feeling refreshed. If you have
Yeah.
any amount of plant fiber or carbohydrates in that meal, you'll wake up feeling like you're, I don't know, on another planet, like you're just
Yeah.
not there. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it's incredibly it's a relief in that sense. And obviously, you know, with your gut being a mess, the amount of flatulence I used to experience was absolutely extreme, and it would just get worse and worse and worse throughout the day until the end of the day, and it was just like, oh my god, I don't want to be alive anymore, and like, and you just you know, if I can count the times I've farted in the last year on two hands.
It's insane, and it's such an. I think it's been normalized that flatulence is a, a part of human biology. This is how, we let out the gases in our stomach. But then you and I know that it's the fibers that cause the fermentation and the process of, trying to get the waste out. It create you essentially creating gases in your stomach with the fiber that you're eating. And if it's something that is non-essential, why include it in your diet in the first place? You improve so much of your digestive function, but the flatulence is something that that is, the relief that you get. I totally agree. Like I used to be the same too. You could every day was, having to hold it in at work, and it was just it's such a hard thing for me to think of right now. Like I could not imagine myself
Yeah,
with such, extreme bloating and just needing to fight all the time. It's insane. But you're really hammering into these points that I really want to talk about, which is the mental health side of things, because this is an aspect that doesn't really get talked about a lot in the carnivore community. Usually, the people that I've spoken to, it's usually about weight loss. It's usually about something physical that you can attach to, and physically see. But with mental health, it's such a huge cornerstone for a lot of us, because when I went carnivore, that was the number one thing that I noticed. Yes, I could see the physical changes. Yes, I know I'm losing weight, but the moment of clarity when it all hit me, um, you know, uh, it's just something I cannot explain. But you have mentioned this before in a post, I believe, but this term of neurodivergence or neurodivergent. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that and explain it to the people who are watching what it is and how it all relates to, the gut health connection?
so I'm personally very very much neurodivergent. Now I don't know how strongly. Um, what I can say is that, as I have mentioned to you, that I have used drugs and alcohol for
Mm,
almost my entire adult life as a means out of not facing up to my neurodivergence. And it's always just been a a a way out for me. The second I have a drink, I just forget about everything,
mm,
and I'm sort of happy in that in that respect. But what I when it got to get me getting sober, properly sober,
mm,
as I mentioned as well, I actually felt worse. It prompted me to go to the doctor to find out about my neurodivergence. So I took the ADHD test, and I didn't know, but it kind of splits. and
Mm.
you either come out on an ADHD spectrum or on an autism spectrum. And I scored 33 out of 36 on the autism spectrum. Now we know that often ADHD and people with autism have ADHD and vice versa. So I'm still waiting for my diagnosis. It takes forever. I've been on a waiting list for a year, so it could come any day. It could be another year, but I don't know what type of autism I have. I don't know if I have ADHD. All I know is that I have, after learning more about ADHD, I have severe symptoms. I I have found massive relief from these symptoms with the carnivore diet that I didn't find with my ketogenic experiment over the past 5 years.
Mm.
As I did say to you, I don't believe I was often in the therapeutic zone of ketosis because
Yeah.
of my love for many for cuisine and plant
Mm.
diversity and just cookery in general. I'd eat, so many crazy mixtures of different cuisines that I was definitely not very often in that 20 gram zone, I don't think. So, um, as we were saying, there are two elements at play here. there's the excessive day long glucose spikes going up and
Mm.
down that can be, causing your mental health struggles, and then there's the anti nutrients on top, and by by a mixture of the two, I believe is it can be making everybody's symptoms in these conditions so much worse.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because of my profound, feeling after actually experiencing the benefits of carnivore. And I was just
Yeah.
like in this really therapeutic zone of ketosis without any anti-nutrition, with all of this bioavailable nutrients just going boom, giving me exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And I now, so as I say, carnivore's not a magic bullet for neurodivergence. I still have very, 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 very severe ADHD symptoms. My brain
Mm.
is going 100 miles an hour all the time. I still don't fall to sleep very easily some nights because my brain's going over and over and over and over. But I have zero anxiety, and I
Mm.
haven't had any the whole time. Um, and this therapeutic ketosis with this bioavailable dietary way of eating is very, 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 very powerful and has been profound in my mental stability over the past year. I'm,
Amazing.
I can't advocate for it enough for people suffering with these conditions. I don't think everybody's going to experience such relief as I did within 48 hours. Um, but it's really, really, really worth looking into if you're on a neurodivergent scale, or
Scale. Yeah.
if you have severe mental health issues or even mild mental health issues.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I think it is a such a fascinating. Even just thinking about the gut to mind connection, it really is just fascinating for me to conceptualize in my mind. It's again something I never considered throughout my years as a nurse. Um, but yeah, there's so much to really cover. But I do want to talk about lastly addiction, because this is something I personally have struggled with, Frank.
Okay.
Okay, I was a food addict.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say, uh, well, let's just, okay. I did also struggle with alcohol for a long period of time. And for people who are, battling with addiction, again, the carnivore diet, uh, for me was that changed everything. And this concept of abstinence, it completely made sense to me. I'd never really seen it in action because I'd seen people. Oh yes, yes, they've cut the, let's say for example, they've went sober for a period of time. Oh great, it works. But to experience it yourself and to actually go through a period of pure abstinence and getting the healing factors from the carnivore diet is surreal. Uh, how goes the food and I guess the sugar addiction and the um, I guess the other addictions that you might say you have right now? Have they completely gone, or is it a work in progress?
So yes, I think this is a a very interesting point you've brought up here. So for me personally, I well, as I mentioned with my story, I managed to get sober off my own back out of
Mm,
just force on myself,
mm,
willpower, and realizing that this is not getting me anywhere.
mm,
So sort of flipping that over, I think if you're someone that's suffering from an addiction of any kind, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or food, this
mm,
can be such a powerful strategy for that also.
mm.
um, it's it's something that you have to really dedicate yourself to,
Yes.
and everybody's going to have to find their why. But I think it could be such a powerful tool for overcoming addiction, as well as not just
Mm,
food addiction, as in, as I mentioned, alcohol or drugs or something like that. So um, as I said, it was the other way around for me because I'd already
mm.
managed it. But regarding my own sugar addiction, I didn't
That's all right.
know
Yep.
what level I was on of that
Yeah.
with that, but I was clearly on a pretty high level of sugar addiction. That
Yeah.
I being a pastry chef, I've understood sugar for a long time,
Yeah.
and I did get into. I would create, all these products at work using the real sugar, and I would make versions with various different sweeteners at home, and so they'd be kind of low carb, but they're
Yeah.
still feeding my addiction. And as I said, throughout my whole ketogenic journey, I'd still eat a little dessert after every meal, and that just
Yeah.
shows you how much of a sugar addiction I had. I couldn't finish a savory meal and then not have at least a piece of chocolate. And a piece of chocolate would be the bare minimum. It would have to be, you know, berries, and I love like sort of acidity and mixed with
Yeah.
sweetness and things, because just flavors and uh, flavor profiles and things.
Yeah.
And it would always be berries, yogurt, dark chocolate, or make a uh, sweetener. I used to use allulose actually, which was the one that I arrived at in the end mostly.
Yes.
um, but I'd make cheesecakes and all sorts of, just sort
Yeah.
of quick ice creams and things like that. It'd all be allulose, but it still all adds up. And yeah, it was a definitely a serious sugar addiction. What did actually
Mm.
happen was, after, I think it was the day after my mental health relief that I experienced from carnivore, I
Yes.
I just the sugar cravings just shut up. So it was day 3, and I haven't even thought about needing a gram of sugar since.
That is insane.
I've
That
had
is crazy.
little bits of chocolate here and there because
Yeah,
that's the pastry chef in me. I've worked
yeah,
with the very finest chocolate in the world, and I appreciate it as a beautiful product. And I can eat one piece of chocolate and go, "That's really delicious," and I know the reason why I love this. I mean, it's almost like coffee. The profiles you can get from chocolate, and the
yeah,
many different
yeah.
profiles you can get from coffee. But I can have one piece and take it and leave it.
That's amazing. I think that is something I really want to highlight to people because it is absolutely true that um, sugar addiction, number one, it's a real thing. I never once thought that, before going low carb or keto, that sugar addiction, I denied it. I denied that it was a real thing because it was such a huge part of my life that no, it can't be true. I was in denial. But you're right. The moment you completely abstain yourself from the sugar, go into a carnivore diet, the cravings just go away. I'm just resonating, I guess, and it just, I do relate to that because, yeah, being a former sugar addict, it's tough. It's tough, but all you need to do is just cut it out and eat the right fuel, eat the right foods. You will feel much better for it. Amazing stuff, Frank. Look, well, I think we've covered quite a fair amount of topics in this discussion, and I'm sure we can go on. But let's wrap up with a few questions here. I like to ask this with all my guests, but could you tell us your top 3 most influential people within? It could be within the carnivore space, or just people who have shaped you as a person on social media talking about carnivore diet. Top 3.
Well, I have mentioned. I mean, I have to sort of pay homage to Dave Asprey for. Well, I mean, it has to be Mark Hyman and Dave Asprey that really
Yes.
started me on this journey that got me to here. Regarding carnivore, I mean, wow, you find yourself kind of close and dear to so many of the.
Yeah. It's tough, isn't it? I know.
So I mean, obviously, Bart Kay had a massive impact. I very much love and respect the British scene. So we've got Richard Smith
Yes.
Nutrition
Yes. Yes.
and Coach Stephen Thomas.
Yes.
And I also I've been to Dr. Ab's some of his
Yes.
workshops.
Oh,
I
nice.
think they're just absolute. They're just brilliant people. Um,
Absolutely.
there's obviously there's Dr. Chafee, Dr. Kiltz. It's just it goes on. So yeah, there's
Yeah, it
there's
does.
yeah.
There's a lot out there, and I think they all do amazing things. But for those, I guess, curious, what does your diet look like right now? If you don't mind sharing that.
So I am the further down my journey I get, the closer I get to pretty much ruminant animals only.
Hmm.
Um, I did. I got a little bit hooked on dairy in the middle of my journey. I put
Yes.
on a little bit. I put on a little bit of weight then, and
Yes.
I actually kept the weight on, but so I'm the heaviest I've ever been. I've always been around.
Okay.
When I was running, I was 62 kg, and then I've been around somewhere between 63 and 67 for the past 10 years since my running days.
Okay.
I'm now actually 70 kg, which is the heaviest I've ever been in my
Wow.
life. And I think
Wow.
those 5 kg I put on in the middle of my carnivore journey about 6 months ago was actually fat, and I think
Yeah.
now I've turned that into muscle. I'm actually
Nice.
lifting. I'm
Nice.
lifting heavier than I've ever lifted in my entire life because I've been
Awesome.
focusing more on hypertrophy.
Yes.
And so, um, yeah, I'm feeling really good being fat adapted, and coming out this side. It does fat adaptation takes proper fat adaptation. Doing all this zero carb pretty much
Yeah.
takes a good bit of transitioning. It can take some people a year to get this to really work for them.
Yeah.
I really feel like
Yeah.
I'm through the other side now, and I have that, the energy to lift, heavier than I ever have.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
It's so interesting, the fat adaptation. I honestly did not feel that when I went keto. I still felt sluggish. I still felt fatigued, but it was the carnivore diet that really. I think that's when the euphoria, the mental clarity, that's when it all kicked in, and that's when I started to. That's when I saw my energy increase. So that fat adaptation, I think, is definitely what for me was the carnivore diet. That's when it all kicked in. Um, awesome stuff. Just being a chef. Could you tell us? I guess what is the most exotic carnivore food you would have eaten?
the most exotic.
Hmm.
Nothing crazy, crazy.
I'm sure Thailand would have
I
had
when I go
quite a
when
few
I go
exotic.
to sorry.
I was gonna say I'm sure Thailand would have had a few exotic uh, foods out there.
Oh yeah, so what have I mean, I've eaten all the bugs in Thailand, but
Yeah,
they would have for sure been deep fried in seed oils.
yeah, that's very very true. Yeah, yeah,
um, I mean, whenever I go to Borough Market in London, I always have raw oysters and clams,
yeah.
um,
Lovely, love
which
it.
is lovely. But yeah, I haven't done that much organ meats. I had some recently. I thought it'd be good to throw some in the mix because I don't think I had any for about 6 months. But as I say, I do mostly varying cuts of ruminant animal meat. And
Yeah,
if I'm not eating grass finished all the time, then which is not all the time. I'm not dogmatic about that. I throw in some sardines or some mackerel for the just to
yeah,
balance out the omega 3s. It's as simple as
yeah,
that. Particularly if you're
yeah.
on a budget and you can't afford to
Absolutely.
just throw in some sardines or mackerel or wild salmon.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. Let's not be dogmatic about it. No, that's awesome. Look, it's been an amazing chat, Frank. Is there anything you want to say as a final message to people who are watching? Maybe some words of advice, or I guess um, words of motivation. Yeah, is there anything you want to tell people?
I guess we can go back to as we did both discuss that mental health benefits of carnivore is not so widely discussed as other topics such as weight loss. So I would like to say that, as I mentioned before, depending where you lie, if you have mental health struggles, depending on where you lie on that spectrum, anything from a well formulated ketogenic diet to a strict, zero carb carnivore diet could be a very, 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 very powerful nutritional strategy for you to get to the bottom of your struggles.
Amazing. Look, Frank, that was a really good message. Really driving it home there, and um, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to you in your journey, your experience. I certainly relate in certain points, and I think it's amazing that we are able to connect like this. I mean, you're from the other side of the world. I'm wearing my blue light blockers. You're in bright daylight, and we're having a conversation, and that's something I really, really appreciate from this, community that we are in. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate you sharing your insights, your experiences, and just having a chat. I think you are an amazing person. So thank you, Frank. And for those who are watching, please subscribe to myself and Frank in our social medias. Oh, Frank, could you tell people what your social media accounts are and where they can contact you for things like coaching?
I'm mostly on Instagram, and my handle is the Frank Wright _. So that's the best place to find me.
Perfect. Well, I will link your Instagram in the video description for people to follow you. But yes, that's a wrap. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. See you.